United Heavy, runway 26, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 26, heavy, but United Heavy.
Welcome to the Aeropedia Podcast. I'm Ashwin.
And I'm Peter. And today's topic is Aviation Analytics. We have the pleasure of having Courtney Miller with us today. After nearly 2 decades in the industry, Courtney has a breadth of experience spanning operations, sales, fleet and network planning, cargo planning, market forecasting, and data analytics. He's the founder and managing director of Visual Approach, providing data and research to the aviation industry. Courtney previously worked for Bombardier Commercial Aircraft, DHL, and as a pilot for Com Air Airlines. Courtney earned his master's at Embry-Riddle and a bachelor's from Purdue. So Ashwin, is there really anything interesting about aviation data?
Well, Peter, when Courtney is presenting, everything becomes interesting.
Well, Courtney, thank you for joining us on the Aeropedia podcast. We're really excited to have you here with us. What we like to kick off with each of our guests is just to share a little bit more about your background, how you got into aviation, what's been interesting in your history to our listeners. So maybe you can share with our listeners a bit about that.
Yeah, first of all, it's great to be on somebody else's podcast. I love it. It's so liberating and freeing. I'm terribly nervous, not true at all. But guys, thanks for the invite. Look, so I do have a story of how I got involved in aviation, and it's a book. It's a book called I forget the title, but I know the author. The author was Arthur Shea, and he wrote a book for kids called like What It's Like to Be a Pilot. And I read this when I was in 2nd grade, and I went, no way, they pay people to do this. And that was it. Like, no kidding. Ever since then, it was lights out. Like there was nothing else as cool. So I'm definitely terminal in my aviation addiction. Ended up going to Purdue University, started my career at Com Air Airlines, the US version, not the South African version. Flew there for 5 years, went to DHL in network planning. So planning some of the greatest, just most epic cargo aircraft. So we're talking like 727s and 76s, 74s, MD-11s, DC-8s, DC-8 63s. Those had 4 fuel to noise exchangers under the wing. And we had a blast doing that. And then, of course, I ended up at Bombardier, where I think I chased Ashwin out of the company, but that was one of my crowning achievements.
Yeah, we're not doing achievements yet. Save that
Oh,
for later.
sorry. And then so after Bombardier, I started Visual Approach Analytics, and so decided to kind of go out on my own and start that in February of 2020. So if you want to talk about timing, I'm your guy. Although I do have to be honest, it actually was a great time, because a lot of what I do is the data and the analytics side. So kind of exercising the left side of the brain, but then also putting it into kind of a distilled visual, hence the name Visual Approach format, and really kind of telling. I don't like to use the word story because that suggests something different, but really kind of translating what we're seeing from the data into kind of communication. So that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years. That's the title of the company. What I actually do is whatever gives me money. I do services for money. Podcasting, did a lot of writing.
This is a clean podcast, just to reemphasize for everyone. It is a clean podcast.
Why? What did you?
You said I do stuff for money, so I think Peter went
services for money. We're not
I don't know what you were thinking. Yeah, but I started writing analysis for John Ostrower at the Air Current. Did that for 2 years. Had a blast. Just learned a ton with John, and work with a lot of investors, lessors on the aircraft side, and a podcast and a weekly kind of network planning newsletter with Brett Snyder, and whatever else with Garrick Deschavan, who's an appraiser, and I appear as a guest on other people's podcasts now. So that's what I do.
Nice. Yeah, we've had Garrick on the podcast as well, and very insightful conversation with him. So Courtney, I want to pull on one of the threads a bit more, right? You've been in kind of in different roles within commercial aviation, and you could have gone anywhere pretty much, right? Why did you choose to start Visual Approach, right? What was the gap in the market that you saw? And talk to us a bit more about exactly how you put together those insights and what value do you think it's going to bring to the industry?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm frank, look, so when I left the cockpit, I kind of made the conscious decision that, wait a minute, I'm on a seniority list here. And I'm willing to bet that if I release myself from that protection, but also that limitation, that I think I could do better. And I did the same thing when I decided to start my business because I wanted to. I mean, that's what it all boiled down to. It's not like there was this bolt of lightning that said, hey, there's a giant gap in the market. Somebody asked me one day, they said, what was the most fun you ever had? And I said, truly doing the marketing and analysis and data analysis, really uncovering just really cool things while at Bombardier. And they said, well, do that for money. And so Visual Approach was started more out of, because this is what I want to do, than I think I can be rich doing it. And I will say that I am having more fun than I am becoming rich, but it's paying the bills. So no concerns. But why I do enjoy it so much, I mean, truly it's that, it's the data analysis, right? And it's more the analysis side of the data. I know I get a lot of requests and questions about just finding data and working with data. And yes, I do all sorts of programming, really heavy into Python, building our data warehouses and all that. But that's a means to an end to really uncover that story, but also tell it, right? To really get into the nuance, to really get into the context. And quite frankly, what I found early on is I lucked out in that what I want to do, other people found a lot of value in. Really being able to approach these questions, especially during COVID, with what I've learned is a contrarian mindset. I didn't, it never set out to be that way, but it is different, and that's a lot of really the value behind what I do, and again, what pays the mortgage, and hopefully will put my kids through college.
So when you pulling data together and information, I mean, how is aviation, do you feel difficult to obtain data for your analysis, or do you have over an abundance of data and it's more of needing to filter out what you really want, or how would you describe
So the marketing answer is it's so difficult, you should pay me to do it. The real answer is aviation has a great just sources of data everywhere, especially in the United States, right? Because we have government data for everything in aviation. And it really kind of gets to the challenges that we're seeing, not just in aviation, just with data in data analysis, just in general. We went through this era where big data was the buzzword, right? So collect all the data and bring it into everything. We're now at a point in time where nobody knows what to do with it, right? We have so much data for so many things. People don't understand how to actually work with it. For instance, I got a bee in my bonnet about this whole Boeing isn't safe thing, and they're throwing around statistics on how many crashes, and you look at them and you're like, you're including B-17s and Boeing Stearman as a Boeing crash and presenting that to the public, right? So that's where the aviation specific knowledge really kind of comes in, right? Understanding terms like PDU and onboards and load factor and how connections work when you're working with passenger flows, what you can count, what you can't. So all that to say, if the industry has really evolved, and not just in aviation, really around the data space and information space, it really hasn't evolved to the point where we do have really good data sources, all things considered. The differentiator now is knowing what to do with it, understanding, going from that core level of, look, I can do data analysis, to asking that question, why is that doing that? What am I missing? That's just another layer deeper that we get into. How might this be wrong? I mean, I'm wrong a lot. I don't tell people when I am, but I'm wrong a lot.
So where does this go, right? In 10 years, do you see where do you see visual approach? And then do you see more folks within the industry doing what you're doing right now? And is data going to play that big a role?
Yes, to all of them. Look, I'll work backwards. Yes, look, data's data. I think now we're starting to understand that it's not everything. I have data, great. It's like it's like I've got a bunch of crayons. That's awesome, but you still need somebody to draw the picture. I'm not the artist. I'm just the guy who finds the artist. So data will always be important. I think the context and the nuance will always be important. I know there's the topic of artificial intelligence. We've been using various models for years. ChatGPT's just over a year old. I mean, in the public lexicon. So that has created kind of a separation between what people think can happen and what actually can happen. So we'll see that play out. But really, for visual approach and for what I have to do, and where I put my energy and efforts, say over the next 10 years, it's in discovering new ways and methods to do something. That's my long-winded way of saying 10 years from now, I'll be doing exactly what I'm doing right now. Don't tell my wife I said that.
Could you share, Courtney, with our listeners a little bit about, I mean, we're talking about data and analysis, but in aviation, there's so many different facets. There's airplanes themselves, there's operations of airlines where there's data and information. There's, we talked air traffic control recently, there's that data mixed with that. What areas do you tend to focus in on, or which areas of data are most exciting to you?
The two may not necessarily be the same answer. So where I focus and where the business focuses based on kind of my clientele is more on the commercial side. Yes, commercial aviation, but on the business of business in aviation. So that ranges from macroeconomic, long-term, like schedule trends, capacity trends, cargo trends. We track the number of container ships that move, because again, that's been shown to affect air cargo, down to, of course, we spend a lot of time with the CH Aviation team and their fleet databases and really kind of understand what's out there. And then anything in the, I'll call it the more alternative data side. I mean, we've done quite a bit of work with cell phone geolocation data to really understand passenger movement, even outside the airport, which is just a massive data set. Financial data, census data, various country demographics data, immigration data, right? So these type of macro stuff tend to be what we focus on. That doesn't mean though that's where it ends, right? I mean, there are, from an aviation perspective, I mean, I just finished a conversation today about like trend monitoring various systems on an aircraft, right? And what you could do with that continuous stream of data coming from a fleet, and you could do exactly what groups are doing today, like Airbus and Palantir and each of the airlines, absorbing that that stream of data and running some predictive analytics on it. We call it AI now, and really understanding predicting potential component failures and pre-positioning spare parts. To Flight Radar 24 has great aircraft flight path data, right? The optimizing routes for say CO2 emissions and fuel burn, or just straight up costs, right? I mean, it's endless, the things you could do in aviation with it.
So the second part was, what do you like? If you could have your special research project, no one telling you what to do, but you want to do it, what would it be?
There are two answers to that. One is probably the real answer, which is it's kind of what I do. I mean, that's kind of the point of starting Visual Approach, was to do that. I mean, I really do find this stuff interesting. That's not a, I mean, that's more luck than anything, just to be able to really enjoy. Well, it's lucky to be able to really enjoy what you do. It's even luckier to be funded and to do that. So very lucky. But I will give you an answer that's better. I really want to, and I've started down the path of recreating a kind of an airline simulation. Ashwin, I don't know if you played Sky Chess.
Oh, a lot.
So one of the very first things I did in programming when I was still a pilot was to create an airline simulation called Airline Empires, which is no longer a thing, but it went for a long time. So I would love to kind of re-energize that on a micro scale and really look at, from an educational perspective, to really look at understanding how revenue management plays a role in route selection and even fleet selection. That's not so much data collection as kind of turning people into lab rats, but I still enjoy that.
I'm just thinking through, with your passion for the data and that, and then your story you began with, where you got into aviation because of a children's book. What would your aviation data children's book be titled? So that you can interest the next generation, the next Courtney Miller, to get into aviation because of the data book that they read as a child.
I do have a title for a book that I'll never write. It's called Crystal Balls: Forecasting with Conviction, but that's not really a children's book.
Well, crystal balls could be something that could get a child interested. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. You know what? I'll tell you what. I'll shoot you a text around 2:30 in the morning when it comes to me, and I can't sleep because I got to tell Peter what the idea for the children's book is. It'll be great.
So Courtney, I think it's well publicized that there's not enough pilots today. There's not enough air traffic controllers today. There's not enough mechanics and not enough aviation professionals being developed, right? So what's missing in the entire system? And there's obviously folks who not only want to get into the professional side of things, but they want to become entrepreneurs and start their own aviation data management company or something similar, right? But I think, just strictly speaking from an aviation perspective, what's missing in this entire chain?
This is a dumb answer, but it is kind of the true one. It's people. I mean, duh. But I mean, it's true from several different perspectives. One, we are entering an era we're exiting an era of global mass population increase, right? And we're very rapidly entering an era of kind of plateau, right? So the abundance of people that we had for the past generations cannot be assumed going forward. So that's kind of a macro long-term view. I mean, we're hearing supply chain and labor issues in industries all over the place. And then it's look, I mean, being a pilot specifically used to be glamorous. It's not as glamorous anymore. I'm not making the argument that it should be. Because I think the reason it was glamorous was because so few did it and so few wanted to. And now it's more accessible. Like, it's great. These are all good reasons, but it's finding it's finding the reason to replace that. So technicians is probably an even more challenging labor shortage kind of long term that we're facing right now. But what an amazing career, right? Being a pilot, what an amazing career, working in aviation. Really, I think kind of switching that mentality from I'm going to be the coolest guy in my neighborhood because I work in aviation to, hey, this is a good job. Like, this is a really good livelihood and a great community. And I'm going to do that because it's the responsible thing to do, as opposed to I'm going to look like, a hero if I do this. And those things kind of ebb and flow over time. We like to complain about the golden age and how, pilots and flight attendants used to walk in the line and look great, through the terminal in all their uniforms. And now it's more of a, I mean, truly, it's more of just a really good job. So working through that transition at a time when we need more, we will, by the way. I mean, we will work through that transition. Whether that be through bigger airplanes and maybe, less ability to grow as quickly as it was, but to fill those positions. Like I think I said on our last podcast, until we have interstellar travel, nothing will be as cool as aviation. Like, I mean, SpaceX has given us a run for our money, but they're not hiring that many people. So it's still really attractive from just an interest. Look, we're all addicts. We can't get out of it, even if we tried. So that's always going to have its draw. And now it's really kind of opening that to people to be like, this is a really good industry. This is a really good career path.
And so one last question in this category. Can you give us an example of the journey of you finding raw data to you analyzing the raw data to then it becoming insight to then a customer taking that piece and actually making a decision based off of that? Can you just give us an example of this entire kind of process?
Yeah, so I think the big secret in the type of work that I do is 90% of it fails. I mean, we're talking exploratory data analysis. Now, sometimes a client will come with an explicit question or more of a defined kind of, okay, we're looking at how passenger traffic may react to this. Okay, so we know kind of how we're going to attack that. But for the research, for the newsletter, for really the exploratory data stuff, it's playing. It truly is playing around. Let's see, it's I wonder if, and 9 times out of 10, the answer is nope, wasn't that. Right. And so you go again. So 90% of the analysis that I do, kind of just all in the aggregate, never sees the light of day because it's just not interesting. And so that's the hardest part, quite frankly, is knowing when to give up, frankly. But then it's, so, okay, we found something interesting. Now let's stress test a little bit. Like, well, if this does this, then it should also mean this. Do we see that? And it's not necessarily a data quality check. It's more, that would be interesting as well. That would really add context to really to say the reader or the listener or whatever, to really understand what's going on. So, it starts in probably, a SQL database somewhere, our exploratory data analysis happens largely with Python. Everything gets dumped into Excel. Just to date myself a little bit, AI to me is Clippy. I just want to make sure that that's my era, and then everything's in Excel, and then we, the data visualizations, and really a lot of the quick analysis and checks to see if what we think might be happening actually is. There's nothing faster than Excel. You can see it all. It gives you the 30,000 foot view to really kind of understand what's going on quickly. And then we may dump it back into Python to build some visualizations. We may build simple visualizations in Excel. We may use SVG graphics to manipulate, all kind of from that Excel standpoint. And then the charts are made, and then frankly, it's just a vomit of thoughts around it. Hey, here's kind of what we're seeing, or hey, look at this, by way of a literal narrative, whether it be writing or the way I prefer is in a presentation to stand up in front of a group of people and literally say, hey, look at this. That's kind of the process, to which during that process, somebody always says, yeah, but what about this? And I think what I've really learned is to take that as to really appreciate that pushback, because it gives us the opportunity to kind of dig a layer deeper that maybe we weren't even thinking about. And so we kind of seek out pushback and questions, and then we do it again or make it better or whatever. That's kind of the process. It's never as linear as that, as you can imagine, but we try to make it.
It seems like a very scientific methodology, right? Similar to a
wrong.
science experiment, right? You're putting a theory out there. You're trying to collect data for it. It's not always going to prove the theory, but you keep on pushing to try to prove more theories.
Yes, and it happens super rapid style. My poor Excel spreadsheets. I mean, I can't even figure out what I was thinking if I open up an old one when I'm doing this exploratory work, right? I mean, we were all kind of guilty of that at some point, but it's really kind of stream of thought, really kind of putting, getting into that focus, throwing the ear plugs in or the ear pods and listening to music and kind of coming to 6 hours later and being like, wow, this is really something we found here. I think the frustrating thing is when you don't, which happens. There's nothing worse than the wife comes home, says, hey, what'd you do today? I'm like, nothing, it turns out. I know what not to do, but that's part of the process. That's actually that's 3/4 of the process.
Well, let us know if the Aeropedia podcast is what you use to zone out when you're working hard.
You know what? You guys are too smart. I need some low-level stuff. But yeah, no, I absolutely, this is good driving and traveling, listening. That's the great stuff. Mowing the lawn, all over it.
Awesome. And thanks for sharing that, right, Courtney? I think, when everybody thinks of data visualization and converting that to insights, we really don't think of the conversion ratio, right? And you saying that, majority of the time this is going to fail. You're not going to find much, right? That's really helpful, right? And it just puts things into perspective. Okay, we're gonna transition to the next section where it's kind of rapid fire. Few questions just to get to know you and your thought process a bit better. The first one is, name one hard skill and one soft skill that someone may need to succeed in your role.
Well, you gotta know Excel. I know that sounds dumb, but I talked to a data analytics grad and they never used Excel, and they're really good at Python and very capable. They didn't teach it. Maybe archaic. I'll probably go to my grave saying you should know Excel, but the customers do expect it. It's the way we show our work. So that's the hard skill. The soft skill, it's as important as anything. I would say it's the most important soft skill. If you're doing data analysis, especially some sort of exploratory or contextual data analysis, is to put the objective of discovery above everything else, including your own ego. And I know that sounds so obvious, and I guess it is obvious to know it and say it, but to actually do it is really hard. Because you put a lot of work into it. You've found the 9 that don't work for the one that does, and somebody comes along and they say, yeah, well, what about? And you really have to consider that, right? Oh, well, yeah, what about? Now, sometimes it's just dumb, right? To which, yeah, you can ignore it, right? I mean, you can ignore it. Don't fight back. But that is the hardest. That is probably the most important and one of the most kind of introspective soft skills to have when doing this. Remember, your job is to discover, not to look like the hero. Sounds obvious. It's actually pretty hard to do.
Yeah, totally agree. What's your fondest aviation memory?
Fondest? I gotta tell you, aviation, just in general, my fondest memory is riding the C Series, and it was still called the C Series at the time, from Montreal to Atlanta, with the Delta team, and with the Bombardier team, to show the airplane off to the employees in Atlanta after they had already chosen to buy the airplane. That was fantastic. I mean, I'm if the name Tony Romano hasn't been tossed around on your podcast yet, it should be, because at the time I spent with him and the Delta campaign, and just the feeling of success. That's I would say that's my fondest memory.
Yeah, I kind of expected you to say that.
I mean, I could say first solo, but
Yeah. But the C series really was a special aircraft, right? And I remember, actually, there's this plane spotter in Atlanta that just does hours of plane spotting. And this one day, he's and it's on YouTube. You can find it very easily. He's doing the plane spotting, and out of nowhere, unannounced, a C series approaches,
Yeah.
and he loses his
he
mind.
loses.
And
I've seen this.
yeah. And so he's like, what is happening here? And then the plane lands, it parks, and all of the Delta executives, he's filmed everything. All the Delta executives actually get on the plane and take a look at it. And wow, that moment is just legendary, according to me, right?
Yeah, I don't fist pump at YouTube videos often, but I did that one. In fact, I reached out to this guy. This is when I was still at Bombardier, and said, "Hey, send me your address. I want to send you a model," because I had a couple models that we would give away. It's like, you should have a model of this airplane. He never replied. His loss. It's sitting right there now.
Okay. What part of aviation do you feel is misunderstood or least understood by the general public, and what can they do to learn more?
You know what? Just because I'm on this kick lately, safety. And look, this is probably more of a commentary on the human species at this point, just in focusing on anecdotes as opposed to kind of the systemic, right? I mean, look, I did not get a news report that said, oh, hey, by the way, flight 2152 landed safely, as did 2153 and 2154. But we are notified when there's some sort of incident or accident. The public, that's terrifying. It's also, I mean, it's very easy to latch on and even kind of visualize those things. And look, safety is not only a paramount objective for the industry. Knock on wood, the industry's done an amazing job, excuse me, with safety. And still, I mean, Boeing is rightly so being dragged through all the trouble that they're having, largely because of issues around that. But it's kind of gone past that. And so for the general public who doesn't necessarily understand just how safe aviation is, I think that's probably it's not necessarily the most misunderstood, but the least kind of truly understood factor of aviation today from a layman's perspective, or like I like to call them, landlubbers.
Yeah, it's an awesome perspective. And the last question in this section is, what's your favorite? You've traveled a lot, and I know this, right? So, what's your favorite flight leg experience, right? End to end. What airline was it? What origin, destination? What cabin? What aircraft, etc.
They're not even that great. I mean, most of the long haul international travel I've done is on American Airlines because I live in the DFW area. That's my review. So goodness. They all just mush together. No, okay, I got one. American Airlines 777-200. That's right, I said it. 777-200. DFW to Maui, for obvious reasons. Why I would consider this. But the reason why it was my best experience is because it was my wife's birthday and we got upgraded. And that's the first time she sat in a true lie flat business seat. Now that was the best part. Like, it was so great to be able to share kind of that experience. Problem was, when we landed and we walked off the airplane, she turned and looked at me and she goes, "So that's what it's like when you're traveling, working so hard?" I'm like, what? No, never. Never. And the lounges, like, I don't know what those are. But that was a great trip.
Awesome. Yeah.
And then at the end of it, I'm in Maui. So
yeah. Cool. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. We're going to transition to the next section. Peter, what is the next section?
Courtney, this is your trivia round. Every episode, we have our guest answer 5 questions, or attempt to answer 5 questions that I put together in the hopes of naming, by the end of the year, our Aeropedia Podcast Trivia Champion. So I hear you might think that you're going to be the champion.
I know that I will not.
Are you ready?
Can we just start with
try?
that? Oh, I'm absolutely ready to give it a try. I just want to make sure expectations are appropriately low.
All right. Even if you don't get them, it's a good education for everyone.
There you go.
I dug deep for this one. Ashwin told me to dig deep into my abyss of my brain. So here you go. You're welcome.
I'm nervous.
All right. Airplane spotting is your first question. What visually distinguished the Lockheed L1011-500 from other variants of the L1011?
I should know this. And I know I should know this. Did the 500 finally mount different engines?
No.
No.
They used the Rolls-Royce through the whole family.
Did they really?
Yes.
The 500, because those
I'll
are the
give you some visual tips here.
Well, it is a stretch. Does that count? Was that the L3 door?
but it's actually the opposite. So the 500 was a long range variant, so they actually shortened the L1011 fuselage. So
See,
the
that's
500
embarrassing.
eliminated the last door of the airplane.
I didn't realize that. That's fascinating.
There you go. The
I
whisper
always
line.
got a kick. Just a little known fact about the L1011 was during pilot negotiations, we were told that the difference between a mainline pilot and a regional pilot was if you sat in front of the nose gear, you were a mainline pilot. If you sat behind it, you were a regional pilot. So there's no more of a mainline pilot than an L10 pilot. I mean, look at that thing.
Yeah, it's way back there. That's funny. That's a good one. We'll have to add that as a trivia round. We'll give it the Courtney Miller.
Yeah, nobody will get it because I just made it up.
All right, question number
Oh,
2,
no.
airline alliances. Can you name the original founding members of the Star Alliance in 1997? And the logo here gives you a little bit of a hint
That there were 5
of how many airlines you have to remember.
So the cornerstone, I believe, was United, Lufthansa. Are those 2 of them?
There are 2.
Okay.
There's another European airline, another North American airline, and an Asian airline. Those would be your hints.
So would it have been US Airways?
Nope.
They weren't Star at that time.
Not founding member.
Oh, Air
no.
Canada.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in Europe, I'm not even going to be able to guess. So here's my guess for Europe. It's probably an airline that's owned by Lufthansa now.
Oh, that's a true. Well, no.
I can't even.
All right.
Oh,
here
nice.
you go.
Oh, SAS. Yeah.
SAS. Was the other
Thai.
European. And Thai was the founding member
Wait a
from
minute.
Asia. So
Yeah, you're right.
I loved this.
That's good.
For those of you that are listening in, we have a YouTube version, and you can see the picture that I've pulled up here of a United 767. So each Star Alliance carrier dedicated a airplane in their fleet to the Star Alliance. I had to cheat on this one because by the time they painted this airplane, there was another member of the alliance. They grew too quick. It was Varig. So I had to cover it up in the picture, but here I've added it in.
I did not know Varig was a Star member. That's fascinating.
They were the next one, the first addition to the original 5. All right. Pretty good. You got partial credit for that one. You got some. All right. Question 3, airlines. This US airline operated a European hub in Frankfurt, Germany from 1991 to 1997, flying Boeing 727s to destinations such as Athens, Bucharest, Istanbul, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Warsaw.
Can I get 4 guesses? I bet I can do this in 4 guesses.
It's not name your airline, name your tune, but
my
yes.
first 3 guesses are Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and then Delta is my 4th and final guess.
Okay. It took you 4 to get there.
I do remember this.
It is Delta.
Yeah, I do remember.
So, Delta took over the routes. They had been operated by, can you name who they operated before Delta?
Ask that again, I'm sorry.
So Delta took over the routes from another carrier in 1991.
Oh, I would assume that's Pan Am.
It is. Yep. So they got the hub when they bought Pan Am's Atlantic rights, and they continued to operate the hub until 1997 with 727s. So here's a picture of 72 and Frankfurt.
Very cool.
All right. ICAO codes. All ICAO codes for airports in the U.S. state of Hawaii. So you've been to Maui, so maybe you'll know. Begin with these 2 letters. It's ICAO codes instead of IATA, so it's a little different.
PH.
Wow. Well done.
P-Hog.
P8.
I was headed to P-Hog. Yep.
So every airport in the state of Hawaii starts with P for Pacific and H for the state of Hawaii in their ICAO code. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Number 5, airports. This airport opened the first passenger concourse bridge to pass over a taxiway in 1988, tall enough to allow a 747 to pass underneath. Can you name this airport?
I don't know why this sticks in my head, but I want to say London Heathrow. Or was it
So
Gatwick?
close.
Was it Gatwick?
So close. It is the other London airport, Gatwick.
Yeah.
Yeah. They opened up a passenger connector to a terminal, and it's the first one. 747 could go underneath.
Very cool.
So,
Yeah, of course it's Gatwick.
so. Well, that was your round.
Hey, that wasn't so bad.
You did pretty well.
Yeah,
So I mean,
Peter,
the L10 11.
it wasn't tough enough. It wasn't.
it wasn't tough enough. All right.
you lucked into. I mean, come on. I mentioned Maui earlier, so that's kind of cheating. I had been there. I got the Heathrow Gatwick thing and the L1011 embarrassment, but cool.
Well done.
Yeah. Well, Courtney, thanks a lot for being on the podcast. This has been very insightful and inspiring, right? And it's always fun to chat, and I'm sure we'll have you on at some point again.
Cool, guys. Fun anytime. I'll listen to you when I mow the lawn, drive the car, fall asleep on an airplane, all the above, probably. But thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us this week. Send us any feedback, trivia ideas, or future topics you may have to our email at aeropedia.podcast@gmail.com. See you on the next leg of our journey.
Bye for now.
Report to any heavy, contact departure 119.2, good night.
49.2, speed at 290 heavy.